Cicero was a famous Roman orator, and he had a scribe named Tiro. Now, Tiro was special not just because he came up with his own shorthand script, but he could transcribe meetings with multiple speakers that were too long for Gemini Pro, and he could do so more accurately than Assembly AI. I'm exaggerating a little bit about Tiro, but I'm not exaggerating about the release of Trelis Tiron, a new model from Trelis Research that is state-of-the-art across open source and commercial models for transcribing and attributing speakers within long meetings. I'm going to show you where you can get the open weights for this model. I'll show you the open source harness used to transcribe long meetings, and I'll show you a few snippets of what Trelis Tiron is capable of doing. You can check it out on Trelis.com. You'll see links to try the model on Trelis Router, and also to get the open weights over here on Hugging Face at Trelis/Tiron. You can also find the harness for running this model. It will do matching across smaller chunks, which I'll talk about later. But first, let me show you a few examples which are live. If you go to Trelis Router, you can upload an example for yourself and transcribe it. In this sample here of audio, it's from a YouTube video with Dwarkesh, Patel and Ilya Susskever. You can see that I have put in the names of the speakers so that the harness is able to not just transcribe and attribute the speech, but assign the correct speakers. And we'll listen to a little snippet here.
You know, it's crazy that all of this is real.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
Real.
Like all this AI stuff and all this Bay Area. Yeah, that it's happened. Like, isn't it straight out of science fiction?
Yeah.
So there's Dwarkesh and Ilya, and notice how it's very well able to handle this overlapping speech when you've two speakers or even up to 8 speakers within a chunk speaking at the same time. The next chunk, or the next audio I want to show you is from British TV, Channel 4. Can't say I listened to much or any. Didn't have Channel 4 when I was growing up. But here we go. And what I've done is passed in the audio. I haven't given any speaker names. And in this case, it will pick out as many speaker names as possible. You can see it's got Tom Allen here. Now, Jimmy Carr is in here too, but Jimmy, his name is not fully within the audio when they talk to each other. So there's no obvious way to pull him out as a speaker. So we'll just listen to a little bit here to how this goes. Notice how this part's noise, so there's nothing transcribed. Doesn't transcribe the laugh here.
As you can see, Jimmy, you are the main Russian doll.
All right, I won't go to the rude part, but you can see a little bit of how Tiron is capable of attributing speakers as well as getting the timestamps right. Now, for the last example, I want to show you this recording from CNBC Fast Money, something from over the pond. And here I've put in the names of the speakers who I know are within this clip. And then if you run the transcription, it will attribute the names to those clips. So let's have a listen here. Actually, we're not going to listen to all of it because these are kind of long pieces. Let's maybe go to 2 minutes 40 and see some of that overlap. So I'll find just 2 minutes 40.
Lost any gravitational pull toward value versus the low PEs got so huge that, I mean, there's still a lot of convergence left to go. So yeah. I think there's more of this.
Right. So there's a lot more to this rotation than we're seeing right now, Tim. Where would you go?
All right. So you can see how Trelis Tiron is capable of transcribing. It transcribes verbatim. It will attribute the speech, and you can download here in multiple formats. You can get timestamps, SRT, VTT, Markdown, or plain text. Now we'll get to a little bit more nerdy part of the video here, where I'll describe a little how this model works, and then I'll talk a bit about the harness. Trelis Tiron is based on Whisper Large, which is the strongest of the Whisper models. It is an older base, but interestingly, despite newer models that have come out since, it is the strongest base model I have found on which to then do mid and post training to get to the quality of Trelis Tiron. So it uses a 30-second window, which means it will require 30-second chunks, and then the harness is what stitches it together to form the full meeting transcript. Now, Whisper provides timestamps within the transcript for utterances, which are typically about maybe 3 to 5 words, and so does Trelis Tiron. And possibly the most helpful way to look at how this works is to check out the raw output. So you can see that Tiron will output the speaker ID, speaker 1, And then it will wrap the utterances within timestamps. So you can see here, there's one timestamp. Thanks for joining. Then let's get started. And then speaker 2. And the way that Tiron works is it will put all of speaker 1's utterances first, then speaker 2, and then speaker 3. And what this means is that everything is going forward in time within each speaker block, but it can then go back again to the start, and it will do all of the second speaker, then back to the start, all of the third speaker, and so on until you go up to a maximum of 8 speakers. So you can see that here it says, thanks for joining, let's get started. But the second speaker actually starts at 2 seconds 98, which of course is right here between these two utterances from the first speaker. So this is the flat format that Tiron is trained on. For every 30-second window, you have the transcript of the first speaker, and that will all be put at the start of the output, then the second speaker, then the third speaker. Now, what that means is it's not a streaming model. To be streaming, you would need to do more interleaving, and this is not how the model functions. You could probably use it for quasi-streaming just because it's such a fast model. These models are all fairly small, but it's not fundamentally a streaming model. So if you use this with transformers, and you could even run this on your computer, or your Mac, for example, because the model is fairly small, you can see the script here if you pass it to your agent. And if you want to do longer audio, then you do need to think about chunking. And I'll talk a little bit about how that works right here. So the chunking is all open sourced in Trelis Research /Tiron. And it involves 3 steps. The first is it will take in the audio, split it based on energy into chunks, and then it will transcribe each of those chunks, and then it will link speakers across the chunks. So I'll talk briefly about how it links those speakers. There are 2 steps. The first thing is it will try to build a spine of high confidence speakers. So it will try to identify portions of audio that have no overlap, because those are very clean. Also that are of minimum length, at least I think half a second. And based on those clean, non-overlapping longer chunks, it will establish a roster of spine speakers. And it does that primarily by using eKappa, which is a speaker embedding model that runs really fast. So based on the similarity of the audio for those high confidence, non-overlapping chunks, it will establish a spine. Now there's one other trick that significantly improves the performance of the spine, which is to run 2 passes of transcription. So actually, if you take the audio, it will be chunked into 30-second, roughly, chunks. But then it will also be chunked at a stagger of roughly 15 seconds. It's actually then 25-second chunks to ensure that they don't perfectly overlap with the 30 seconds. But by running that second pass, you now, for any given point in time, have got 2 transcripts, and they share different windows. And this is pretty helpful because at a given timestamp, if you have a speaker, you know that must be the same speaker. And so you can now directly match a speaker from the first pass with a different chunk in the second pass. And this allows confidence in linking 2 speakers or in not linking 2 speakers, which allows you to refine the spine. So once you have the spine established, which is based on this similarity of eKappa, followed by this linking confirmation that you have from the 2 passes, you then look at the remaining pieces of speech that are either very short or that are overlapping, and you decide to merge them in based first again on similarity, which will be more approximate if you have overlapping speakers because it's not a clean speaker embedding, and then second of all based on proximity, so you will merge into the closer chunks. There are quite a few rules involved, but that's the principle of how the harness works, and it's all fully disclosed here if you want to try it out for yourself. Now, I will just show some of the results here. I have compared this model across a very wide range of open source and commercial models. There are not many models that will do combined attribution and transcription and timestamps. Gemini Pro is actually quite good, but it's good on shorter meetings. For longer meetings, it will often just fail to return a response if you have a meeting that has got 1 hour. Of all of the open models and closed models, Assembly AI, I believe, is the best of the models. And so that's the one that I benchmark against here. You can see the performance on some withheld test meetings from AMI, also from ICSI, from Not So Far. And then this here is a a pooled average across all of these corpuses or corpui. I'm not sure if that's a word. So you can see that I believe right now Tiron, and I'm sure models will improve, of course, over time, is state of the art for whole meeting transcription. I will point out that there's still a long way to go. This is to be improved down further. These are much higher word error rates, and it's CP where, which is concatenated permutation, because you need to care about the order of the speakers. This is a lot higher than what you would see from clean speech, and I expect this will improve over time, but it is still state of the art. And these meetings are very difficult and have a very high level of overlapping speech. If you move to meetings that have got just short 2 speakers, like I showed you with Dwarkesh, or the other ones, it's going to transcribe those meetings pretty cleanly. So that's it for Trelis Tiron. It's available, as I said, on Hugging Face. You can try it out directly, either via API or via UI if you go to router.trelis.com. And in the meantime, let me know of any questions in the comments as per usual. Cheers.